Hi, I would recommend that you skip this video because it's pretty much all about, I'm gonna use abbreviations here like CSA, essay, lots of abuse, and yeah, it could be hard to get through, so maybe skip it. I don't know, watch at your own discretion.
But surely it's a question of recognizing children's maturity, and how can you have an equal relationship, which is what I take a mature sexual relationship to be, between an adult and a child who is not mature in body, in mind, or personal awareness? It has to be unequal.
I don't accept that this concept of maturity at all. Adults, for instance, aren't necessarily mature. It's a long process.
Well, I take it for granted that no adult is probably ever mature, but nevertheless, my state of maturity, or your state of maturity, is clearly different from that of a child of 12. How can there be an equal relationship which allows of sex, which is usually a shocking experience for everybody at some time or another? How can you allow of an equal relationship between two people so unequally positioned at the starting off point?
Well, I don't accept that sex is a spontaneously shocking experience.
But I'm saying at some stage or other there is an element of shock in sex.
Not if children are properly educated about sex, and it's an obligation on society to see that children are given a far more comprehensive sexual education from a far earlier age.
But in that case they find it out, they discover this with people of their own age and in their own time, and it is the question of inequality which I come back to, which I think you haven't answered.
Pedophiles do not use a child's sexuality. Pedophiles develop a mutual sexuality with the child. It's an entirely reciprocal relationship.
But you can't say that because of this business of immaturity and the inequality of the relationship.
Yes, but the definition of maturity is yours. We don't share it.
Well, what is your definition of maturity in this context? Now, how can a child of 12 make a mature judgment about something like sex for the first time, which it has not the first idea about, and cannot possibly weigh the consequences of it?
You're imputing to a sexual relationship heavy judgmental issues which
no, I'm not. I'm talking about the
intrinsic.
physical and psychical response.
Yes. A child is able to recognize a pleasurable experience. He is able to recognize a pleasing emotional experience. He is able to express consent and to recognize that this is something he wishes to continue. And a responsible, caring pedophile it always refers to the wishes of the child.
I spent the better part of my 12th year as a human being watching and rewatching the 2005 David Slade directed bottle thriller Hard Candy. It was actually really bad. I would stay up late watching the movie, and as soon as it was finished, I would start the commentary version where actors Patrick Wilson and Elliot Page, the object of my affection, shared behind-the-scenes secrets and divulged little details about their performances that made me love the movie even more. At one point, I took it upon myself to memorize every bit of dialogue, every movement, every micro-expression that Page used in his performance as Haley. At the time, I was still into the idea of acting, before I realized I'd have to be on camera for that.
Let's go. No cameras, please. No cameras.
And I thought mastering the role of Haley would give me some gravitas or something. It was a really meaty role for my preteen self. Many years have passed since then, and I never really thought that hard about my obsession with this movie. I just chalked it up to the fact that I was carrying a torch for Elliot Page, and as such, felt the need to watch every single thing he'd ever done and be really weird and parasocial about it. In March, I rewatched it, and revisiting it as a mature, seasoned adult allowed me to see things I couldn't at 12 years old. Things that resonated so deeply with me that I couldn't shake them. It's true that I had a crush on Elliot Page, so I watched the movie a lot. And it's also true what I couldn't understand back then was that there was something about this movie that strangely brought me a sense of comfort. Why was that? "14-year-old Haley spends a lot of time in online chat rooms. Like most teenagers in the 90s to the mid-2000s, the chat room presented a world free from the constraints and rules of childhood, a world where you could be anyone you wanted to be, where every interaction was like Halloween night, playing cyberspace dress up. These chat rooms could easily and often did become hunting grounds for child predators. Older guys frequently make conversation with Haley, and some of them seem to grow more interested when she reveals her actual age. like Jeff. Under the usernames ThongGirl14 and LensMan319, Haley and 32-year-old Jeff meet and quickly bond over the likes of author Zadie Smith and pop duo Goldfrapp. Haley is so intelligent, and she has great taste, and she's, of course, wise beyond her years. And Jeff is very sweet, very supportive, and he treats Haley like an equal, not like a child, which she appreciates. And they have so much in common. Every time Haley expresses interest in something, Jeff reveals he's also a really big fan of that same thing. She's so impressed with him. He says all the right things. He appreciates her taste in music, in art, in books. He tells her how deeply he connects with her, how he's never connected with anyone else in the same way. After a couple of weeks of chatting online, Haley is convinced that there's something special between them. Jeff is too. So they decide to meet in person. To Haley's relief, Jeff is handsome and charismatic. Not the type of guy, she says, who needs to meet girls on the internet. Over coffee and pastries, they melt the ice and awkwardness that comes with leaving cyberspace and entering real life, shedding digital personas and getting to the truth. Their conversation is playful, flirtatious, and even protective at times. Discomfort ebbs and flows, the air becomes tense as we watch them, as Jeff emanates the energy of an older brother and a boyfriend at the same time. The sheer wrongness of it all.
Good things are worth the wait.
Oh, and what have you waited for recently?
Well, I'm gonna have to wait 4 years for you.
And our anxiety spikes as we worry about Haley, a 14-year-old girl hanging out with a grown man she met over the internet. How wrong can this all go for her?
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a very special Christmas edition of Jimmy Fix It.
In 2011, not long after the death of Jimmy Savile, beloved DJ and television personality, BBC's Newsnight had their next story. While hundreds of fans traveled across the country just to see his coffin and pay their respects, journalists Marion Jones and the late Liz McKean were putting the finishing touches on a special about the public figure. But it wasn't a special about his life and career and achievements. It was about the lives he ruined, and the people who had for themselves seen a side of Savile the public could only speculate about. Jones and McKean were interviewing Savile's victims, of which there were many. The rumors of his predatory behavior first began to circulate in the 1950s. The earliest police investigation into allegations against him was in 1955. By the 1980s, Savile's sexual abuse of children was something of an open secret. His abuse of children and the elderly, as well as his desecration of corpses at the hospital he volunteered at, seemed like such an open secret that TV personalities would make not-so-subtle jokes about the rumors.
8-year-old girls love Jimmy Savile, though, don't they? And of course... Anyway, I won't go on.
Yeah. Yeah, he loves her slot. That's what I'm saying.
I haven't been this excited since Jimmy Savile came to our open day at school and sat on my face.
Oh, God!
After Jones and McKean had completed the story for Newsnight, BBC decided not to run it. Their special was meant to be televised in December of 2011, shortly after Savile had passed, but it never made it to air. In its place, a litany of tribute programs to Savile were broadcast.
For 6 decades, Sir Jimmy Savile was part of the fabric of British life.
He was about the brightest thread that there was.
Wow, there's someone who's really lived, had really the best time you could probably have, and you can't really ask for more than that.
This decision became a scandal that marred Newsnight and the BBC in controversy for years, but more importantly, it further postponed the full truth and scale of abuse from becoming public knowledge. It robbed the people brave enough to come forward from having their stories heard.
I was very unhappy the story didn't run because I felt we'd spoken to people who collectively deserved to be heard. They weren't heard, and I thought that was a failure.
And were you concerned that actually compounded the hurt?
Yes, I felt we had a responsibility towards them. We'd got them to talk to us, but above all, we did believe them. And so then, for their stories not to be heard, yes, I felt very bad about that. I felt very much that I'd let them down.
Jones and McKean also collaborated with an outside consultant named Mark Williams Thomas, who also had all the research, all the evidence, and could easily take the report to a station willing to air it. Williams Thomas found the answer in rival company ITV, and Jones and McKean were okay with that because for them it didn't matter how the story got out. It just needed to get out. In October of 2012, ITV aired Exposure, the other side of Jimmy Savile. Soon, more people would come forward and the Metropolitan Police would launch a formal investigation into the claims. Upwards of 400 victims came forward. These assaults took place in BBC studios, in schools, in hospitals Savile volunteered at, and even in children's homes. The victims ranged between the ages of 5 and 75. It's too late to do anything about the rotting Savile, of course, so the police and the general public start looking for those who would have been complicit in Savile's abuse, people who either took part in it or looked the other way. In connection with Savile and the BBC, Freddie Starr, BBC radio producer Ted Beston, and Gary Glitter, who at this point was a no-nonce who had a laundry list of convictions against him, were arrested. As these arrests are taking place, the investigation, now called Operation U-Tree, expands to other media personalities involved in child sexual abuse. There was just so much of it, they had to keep looking. Meanwhile, even more attention is brought to the scale of Savile's predation. The investigation not only highlights that he'd been under questioning in 2009 for incidents that took place at Duncroft-approved school, an institution Savile visited at least 16 times from 1974 to 1979, but it also revealed that there were police reports of his abuse dating back decades. From 1955 to 2000, Savile had cultivated an entire catalog of reports against him. So the question on people's minds was, how did he get away with it for so long?
I turned up at the Lotus House, I think it was on a Friday evening, and there he was sitting on a banquette with this very young girl. I would guess she was 12 if you'd asked me to guess. It could be that she was 13, 14, but I would have said 12. I asked him where he'd found her. I said that to him, where did you pick her up? And he said, Top of the Pops. I think it was the previous night. Top of the Pops went out on a Thursday night. And I said, I remember saying, is that your happy hunting ground? And he said, yes. And that was the extent of my conversation about the girl, because I found it rather demeaning to be having to talk to him in front of a little girl like that. And then we made an arrangement that I would ring him next morning at the Mascot Hotel. And next morning I rang him and he was obviously in bed with this young girl. In fact, he said he was in bed with her. And he asked me to talk to her, and I had to rather demean myself by saying hello. And she said, hello, Mr. Producer. And that was, I refused to have any more. I didn't want to talk to her again. I talked to him. We discussed that he would come in on a Sunday night for the live transmission, and that was the extent of it.
In 1992, Lynn Barber was the first person to directly ask Savile on record about the rumors, which he quickly dismissed. I was nervous when I told him, what people say is that you like little girls. He reacted with a flurry of funny-voiced Jimmy Savile patter, which is what he does when he's getting his bearings. Now, sure. Now then. First of all, I happen to be in the pop business, which is teenagers. That's number one. So when I go anywhere, it's the young ones that come around me. Now, what the tabloids don't realize is that the young girls in question don't gather around me because of me. It's because I know the people they love. The stars. Because they know I saw Bros last week, or Wet, Wet, Wet. Now you, watching from afar, might say, look at those young girls throwing themselves at him. Whereas in actual fact, it's exactly the opposite. I am of no interest to them. My favorite part of his response is how he doesn't actually say he's not into little girls. He doesn't actually refute the claim Barber has brought up. Instead, he spins it. He responds to her prompt as if what she said was, what people say is that little girls like you. He can quiet any suspicion around his actions, kind of seem like he's dismissing it, and he can spin it, or at least try to spin it, as something that girls are doing to him. But then at the same time, he kind of ends up telling on itself. Look at those young girls throwing themselves at him, whereas in actual fact, it's exactly the opposite. There are a lot of reasons why Savile was able to get away with what he did for so long. He was a popular figure. His part in programs like Top of the Pops, of which he hosted over 200 episodes, the short-lived Clunk Click, Play It Safe, and of course the massively popular Jim'll Fix It, a program where children wrote letters to Savile asking him to make their dreams come true, meant he was popular with children and teens. The The time he spent donating to charities, raising money to rebuild hospitals, volunteering as a porter, all of that made him look like a saint. An odd guy, sure, but he was funny and he did good work. That public image contributed to the hesitance his victims felt in coming forward. Victims of sexual abuse, especially children, tend to feel a lot of shame and self-blame for what happened. That feeling, combined with the dissonance of knowing how beloved the person who abused you is, makes you almost not believe it yourself, and you keep quiet because you know what people would say if you told them. No, he wouldn't do that. You must be making it up. A really important thing about Savile's philanthropy is how it was largely used as a way to get closer to his victims. It's not uncommon for predators to use charity work as a way of ingratiating themselves to their community or, in the cases of huge celebrities, to the public at large. Because of his volunteer efforts and his reputation as a person who made the wishes of children come true, he was able to get away with hanging out with 13-year-old girls at the Duncroft approved school. He was able to get away with taking them on rides in his car and being alone with them. His time volunteering at the hospital as a porter also gave him access to victims who couldn't do anything to stop him. Savile was insulated by his charity work, his fame, his money, and the police he befriended, who often looked the other way. He was powerful, his victims weren't. He was known to the public, his victims weren't. If they ever wanted to come out against him, all he needed to do was claim that all they wanted was money or attention. After a while, he seemed untouchable, to the point that he would basically flaunt it. In his autobiography, published in 1974, Savile wrote, "A high-ranking lady police officer came in one night and showed me the picture of an attractive girl who had run away from a remand home. 'Ah,' says I, all serious. 'If she comes in, I'll bring her back tomorrow, but I'll keep her all night first as my reward.' It is God's truth that the absconder came into the club that night. Taking her into the office, I said, 'Run now if you want, but you can't run for the rest of your life.' She listened to the alternative and agreed that I hand her over if she could stay at the dance, come home with me, and that I would promise to see her when they let her out. At 11:30 the next morning, she was willingly presented to an astounded lady of the law. The officeress was dissuaded from bringing charges against me by her colleagues, for it was well known that, were I to go, I would probably take half the station with me." At Jeff's house, the uncomfortable flirting continues with alcohol instead of coffee, and escalates to the point of Haley taking off her shirt while Jeff starts to photograph her. Inspired by the pictures Jeff has on his walls, professional shots he's taken of models, most of them teenage girls, Haley wants to know what kind of model she would be. But it ends before it can begin. When Haley made their drink, she put something extra in Jeff's, and he passed out before the shoot could continue. It's here, not earlier in the cafe, that the digital personas really start to dissipate. Until this moment, Jeff is still performing as Lensman, and Haley is still performing as Thong Girl, each role intended to appeal to the other's desires. Haley even has a costume for her performance, red leggings and a skirt, that she retires when the performance is complete. When Jeff wakes up, he thinks it's all a joke, or kinky foreplay.
Why do I get tied up first if this is how we're gonna play?
Jeff, playtime is over. Now it's time to wake up.
Hard Candy is a thriller on the quiet side. No huge set pieces, no spectacles of action, not a whole lot of adrenaline, just a conversation between a girl who knows she's in front of a sexual predator and a man who knows that he isn't one. There are mind games and tricks. Their conversations are moves on a chessboard. Haley will give a reason why she believes Jeff is a child predator, and Jeff will have a reason why he believes he isn't one, how she's mistaken.
I'm saying my modeling shots are just part of my portfolio. I've shot a lot of different subjects, some of it very important work.
And it was so important that you thought, well, I can't possibly hang it on the walls of my home. I need to plaster my house with pictures of underage nymphs and just tuck the nature shots away.
Haley has waited for this day. She planned for it, purposefully proposing a meeting on a day when she knows Jeff's closest neighbors would be away from home. She's been watching Jeff, learning his routines and scoping out his neighborhood. But the stalking, she says, didn't start on her end. It started on Jeff's.
You've been stalking me?
Okay. All right, let's get this straight. You have been stalking me. I went into other chat rooms with different nicknames, and you would get to know each woman.
When she talked to Jeff as a 19-year-old girl, he ended the conversation. As an 18-year-old girl, he ended the conversation. But as a 14-year-old girl, he just really wanted to get to know her. They connected.
You took your time sniffing out someone my age.
I didn't talk to the others because they were boring. You and I connected.
It's been described as an ambiguous film. Is Jeff a pedophile or isn't he? Is Haley right, or is she hiding behind a moral reason to get her homicidal kicks? There aren't supposed to be any clear answers, and whether it's critics or audiences or the people involved in the movie like the writer Brian Nelson, they'll say it's really anyone's guess as to what the truth is. I can appreciate letting audiences decide what works for them. I understand Nelson and Slade not wanting to tell anyone what to think. I also think, after many rewatches, Hard Candy is not nearly as ambiguous as it's made out to be. Haley says Jeff is a predator. Jeff says he isn't. What we're watching is essentially a tennis game, a riveting back and forth between denial and insistence. That's why it's hard to view the situation itself as ambiguous or to be uncertain of Jeff being a predator, because his denial is the driving force behind this idea of ambiguity. He says he's not a predator, and if we just take his word for it, then sure, the story really is ambiguous. But Jeff's words are telling us he isn't someone that his actions are telling us he is. What 32-year-old goes into chat rooms looking for 14-year-old girls? What 32-year-old meets a teenager in person and takes her to his house and drinks alcohol with her? What 32-year-old man flirts with said 14-year-old and suggests wanting to have sex with her? It seems that because he doesn't kiss Haley or do anything explicitly sexual with her, audiences can place doubt on whether or not he is a predator. All signs point to it. But who can be sure? And besides, Jeff seems like a nice enough guy.
This is Sway with the MTV News right here on Direct Effect. Now, it's been 1.5 years since R. Kelly was indicted on 21 counts of child pornography, charges which would have ruined most careers, but not R. Kelly. Instead, his has flourished.
Whenever there's a famous case involving sexual abuse across decades, the reaction from the general public always seems to be, it went on for so long and it's only just coming out now. How did no one know? And the answer to that is always astoundingly simple and bleak. The answer is that everyone knew. Maybe not everyone in the general public, but enough people knew to make sure the abuse continued to take place and that the perpetrator was never stopped. Enough people knew for it to be an open secret in the industry, like in the case of Weinstein or Cosby. R. Kelly is one of those rare instances where the general public definitely had an idea. His marriage to 15-year-old Aaliyah when he was 27 had made headlines.
Kelly also found time to write and produce top 10 hits for his teenage bride Aaliyah. Teenage bride Aaliyah.
Why'd you say it like that?
People heard the rumors of him enjoying the company of underage girls, and if they lived in Chicago at the time, they might have even seen him hanging out around the high school. And everyone knew about the tape.
I saw the tape. Y'all see the tape?
Yeah, no tape. The infamous tape that made its way around the world. People selling copies of it in barbershops out of the trunk of their car. Of R. Kelly sexually abusing a 14-year-old girl. But no one ever called it the child abuse tape or the child pornography tape. They called it R. Kelly sex tape. And it was funny. There was Dave Chappelle.
Your body is a porta potty. And my pee got kicked.
And again.
What more would it take for you to believe he's guilty?
All right. If I saw a tape with R. Kelly peeing on a girl while he was singing Piss on her, and the girl was holding 2 forms of government ID.
And again.
R. Kelly pissed on his victim. You guys are confusing the issue. While you guys are busy worrying about if R. Kelly even peed on this girl or not, you're not asking yourself the real question that America needs to decide once and for all. And that question is, how old is 15 really?
This last joke seems to get a lot of credit for being insightful, allegedly, but it only works if you know as little about the cases he's referencing as possible. I went on a tangent about this joke because, I don't know, it bothered me, but I didn't think it fit into the final video. It was making this section drag a bit, so I put it on my Patreon. Don't worry, this isn't a paywall call. It'll be available for free, and if you want to support, you can, whatever. Moving on. Barbershop 2.
Hey, Isaac, play something.
Anything with R. Kelly, please. Something wrong with that boy, man. He needs some serious help, man. We ain't listening to no R. Kelly up in here.
Hold now, Ricky. We're gonna start talking about R. Kelly.
Can't believe everything. You know how the media likes to spin stuff.
Girl, you know that was him.
You don't know?
I think it was set up. Oh, now you set up now. He set up the camera. You just couldn't tell it was him. He had his head so far up that girl behind, you thought it was Groundhog Day. You know what?
In real life, Michael Ealy didn't return for Barbershop 3 because he didn't like the script, but you know what? Looking at this scene canonically, I think Ricky just realized he was working with a bunch of weirdos and didn't want to put up with it anymore. Good for you.
Girl, you know that was him.
An episode of The Boondocks called The Trial of R. Kelly. Unlike the Chappelle joke, the episode wasn't just about making fun of the contents of the tape. It held up a mirror to the cultural reaction. Characters like Riley passionately defend R. Kelly, while characters like Huey watch the mass support of a person who is clearly a pedophile in complete bafflement. The episode ends with one of Huey's most memorable speeches.
What the hell is wrong with you people? Every famous nigga that gets arrested is not Nelson Mandela? Yes, the government conspires to put a lot of innocent black men in jail on fallacious charges. But R. Kelly is not one of those men.
This episode aired in 2004, and R. Kelly would go on to have a career for many more years. It was 2002 when he made headlines for possession of child pornography, but that didn't stop him from releasing Chocolate Factory or from having multiple tracks reach the Billboard Hot 100. He went on to collaborate with the likes of Usher, Jay-Z, Ludacris, T-Pain, Snoop Dogg, and many more. Everyone saw it happen. Then they all just moved on. The music was more important. He was still making people money, and the victims didn't matter. It's fair to say that to a lot of people, the victims weren't even victims. R. Kelly left a trail of victims and settlements and evidence in his wake. He was untouchable. This headline from The Guardian is a great example because what do you mean R. Kelly faces more child porn charges? He was already facing them and everyone just threw their hands up and said, but the music is good? There's no great mystery about it. The question of how he got away with it for so long, it's because people let him. And the sad fact is there are a lot of people right now who still defend him, who think he's a victim, who bully the survivors who came forward, will continue to close their eyes to what's obvious because he can carry a tune.
We all know the nigga can sing.
In Maureen Ryan's explosive book, Burn It Down, Power, Complicity, and a Call for Change in Hollywood, she writes of this phenomenon of conflating good artists with good people. His mistake is the same one I made for a long time, assuming an admirable film or show or song must have been made by admirable people. It is human to want to ascribe positive qualities to people whose stories or art have left us moved, changed, challenged, and feeling seen. In order for a perpetrator like Kelly to continue doing what they're doing on such a grand scale, they need to have help, enablers, collaborators, people in their circle who see things happening and don't do anything to stop it. A network of complicity is what allows abusers to do what they do best. During R. Kelly's 2021 trial, it became clear how much of this was made possible by people on his payroll. In Troy Clausen's coverage, he wrote, "One assistant, Anthony Navarro, told jurors he drove female guests to one of the singer's mansions and there was instructed to help maintain a strict set of rules that controlled their daily routines." And a former tour manager for the singer, Demetrius Smith, told jurors he bribed a government employee for fake identification for the R&B star Aaliyah to marry Mr. Kelly, then 27, who believed that she may have been pregnant with his child. She was 15. Of course, there's a power dynamic there as well. Boss and employee, overlord and underling. There's a chance people were afraid of losing their jobs or being blackballed. I don't know. It's still no excuse. Earlier this year, Reshona Landfair wrote a book about her experiences being groomed and abused by R. Kelly. She first entered public consciousness as the girl on the tape. She became the butt of jokes. She had to listen to people discussing the tape, not realizing it was her, calling the girl involved fast or stupid. She had to listen to people laugh at evidence of her being abused and humiliated. When Dave Chappelle's Piss on You skit aired in early 2003, it added insult to injury for 18-year-old me. Here I was, just a few months out from the trauma of the whole world witnessing the disgusting things Robert Sylvester Kelly did to me, and he compelled me to vehemently deny. And now there was a whole Chappelle Show skit poking fun at my humiliation. I'm sure Chappelle would say that comedians make fun of inappropriate stuff all the time, and all of you who laughed at the punchline would argue you weren't laughing at me. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. I'd never seen that tape. I never wanted to see that tape. I never want to see that tape. So I never knew what the girl on it looked like. And when I saw Reshona Landfair for the first time, promoting a book she published earlier this year, I saw, of course, how she looks now at 41 years old. And I wanted to cry. Because at 41, Landfair still has round cheeks, big eyes, and a baby face. And my stomach dropped. If this is what she looks like now, what did she look like at 14? At 15. And I'm not insinuating that it would be better if she looked older. At the end of the day, she would still be 14. What gets me, what's so striking about how she looked back then and how she looks now, is just that there's no way you could mistake this child for a grown woman. And the amount of people who talked about watching the tape and who were proud of it and who laughed about it. I remember it being a popular topic when I was a kid and I couldn't understand it. I tried to make it click in my mind, but I couldn't. I wanted to ask the adults around me, if he did this bad thing, why is everyone okay with it? The so-called ambiguous heroism of hard candy can be something of a challenge for a lot of people. Some audiences are okay with not having anyone to root for. Others are a little put off by the two extremes of Haley and Jeff and forego the movie altogether. And then there are others who are determined to place, if not heroism, then a lesser evil on a character so they can at least have one villain. And suddenly you're reading sentences like, even if Jeff was a pedophile, Haley's actions were too extreme. That's a real comment someone left on one of the forums I was scouring. Yes, it was Reddit. Haley is a character that brings out the worst in people. An audio commentary recorded by Wilson and Page for the Hard Candy DVD, Page mentioned how it seemed like men more so than women had a deep hatred of Haley. He mentioned it again in an interview with Devin Pharisee shortly after the film's release. Sometimes you get men who are really angry about it and who just hate my character, and all their sympathy goes to Jeff, which is really interesting for him to be excused for a lot of behavior. The vitriol for Haley has stood the test of time. In fairness, not everyone who watches Hard Candy walks away from it wishing Haley was dead. That certainly wasn't my response when I was spending every waking moment rewatching the movie, and there are plenty of people who enjoy Haley as a character. But it's also fair to say that Haley received a lot more criticism than Jeff, who, yes, may have been knowingly chatting to a 14-year-old girl online and was pretty open about wanting to have sex with her. But is he really that bad in comparison? Are you picking up on my tone? I want to make sure you're picking up on my tone. For example, in Justin Stewart's review of Hard Candy, he wrote, "It'd be an all too accurate cliche to say that the real torture is inflicted on the audience, not because we have to endure the movie's drawn out, though decidedly ungraphic castration scene, but because we're force-fed this posingly sinister teenager's endless self-righteous harangues on the evils of child victimization. Nelson's dialogue can be occasionally appealing in its ridiculousness, but more typical are the teary-eyed, finger-wagging pleas as Paige all but turns to the camera to tell anyone who has ever spent a lonely minute on a site of ill repute, stop. Don't do that to yourself." I don't know if Stewart simply forgot or intentionally omitted the context of the Haley quote he found so torturous. He says Haley practically turns to the camera and scolds anyone watching for ever having, quote, spent a lonely minute on a site of ill repute. From the way this is written, I'm assuming Stewart is talking about regular old pornography. But what Haley says right before this is,
imagine that when you downloaded this little girl, I was sitting by your side saying, stop, don't do that to yourself.
Haley's not reprimanding Jeff or anyone in the audience for that matter for watching regular adult films. Just a few scenes earlier, she's telling Jeff how suspicious she's become because she couldn't find any porn in his house, and says,
And I mean, guys tend to have porn around, don't they? I mean, nothing against it, nothing against them. It's just the way they're brought up.
The "stop, don't do that to yourself" line isn't about adult porn. She's talking about Jeff downloading child pornography. I want to believe that Stewart mistakenly assumed this line was about adult pornography. I certainly don't want to believe that someone watched this scene, picked up on the indication that Haley was talking about possible possession of CP, and felt offended by it. I certainly don't want to believe that. Stewart also seems to misunderstand Haley's reasoning for saying it. She's not sincerely telling Jeff, "Don't do that to yourself." She's making fun of him, taunting him. She's about to castrate him, or at least he thinks she is, and he's tried everything to talk her out of it, including telling her,
If you cut me in any way, you won't forget it. It changes you when you hurt somebody. The things you do wrong, they haunt you. You want to remember this day when you're with a guy, on a date, on your wedding night? Because I promise you, you will. Don't do that to yourself.
Stewart isn't the only reviewer at the time to misremember Haley's actions. A big talking point when the film came out in 2005, just 1 year after the release of Saw, was how disappointing and dreary it was that so-called torture porn and mutilation were being passed off as films. Manohla Dargis for the New York Times wrote, "Although she claims to want to right the wrongs of this alleged fiend, what Haley says and does to her internet Humbert firmly makes the case that this avenging angel is really the demon daughter of Valerie Solanas and Lorena Bobbitt, and consequently as reprehensible as her prey." The reference to Lorena Gallo, formerly known as Lorena Bobbitt, is interesting because if you watch Hard Candy, you know that Haley doesn't actually castrate Jeff. She pretends to, even puts on a video of a surgical castration so Jeff thinks she's recording it live. Going back to Stewart's review, he was also nonplussed by the castration scene being decidedly ungraphic. But I think you'd agree that it's understandable that a movie that doesn't actually include a castration would be ungraphic. I find that this is very commonly forgotten, even though it's quite obvious that she didn't do it, even if you somehow miss Jeff saying, surely he wouldn't be able to get up and chase her, no? Gallo, as a comparison to Haley, who Dargis sees as being a villain as detestable as Jeff, is kind of gross. In 1993, Gallo made headlines after she severed her husband's, let's just say member, and threw it out of the window of a moving car before calling the police to confess what she'd done. The media had a field day with her. She was a joke. She was a crazy bitch, you name it. What a lot of the more sensationalist headlines left out was that Gallo was a victim of domestic abuse and had been assaulted by her husband that very night. Her husband John was a serial cheater, serial rapist, and abuser. On many occasions, he threatened to kill her and told her if she left him, he would always find her and do whatever he wanted with her. The comparison is interesting, and it's an example of how differently Haley and Jeff are viewed. Jeff can chat up 14-year-old girls online, he can drink with them at his house, he can have half-naked pictures of teenage girls on his walls under the guise that he's just proud of his work. He can know a girl has been kidnapped, will be sexually assaulted and murdered, and his only real concern is whether or not he gets to take pictures of it all going down. He can be a predatory monster, but compared to Haley, who lures him into a trap, psychologically tortures him by pretending to castrate him before making him choose between going to jail and killing himself, he might as well be an angel. Similarly, when the media covered Lorena Bobbitt, what her husband didn't seem to matter. It's striking how people react to Jeff, especially how unconvinced they are of his guilt, even when he admits at the end that he was basically in denial the whole movie.
You're right, Haley. Thank you. Thank you. This is me. This is who I am. Thank you. Thank you for helping me see it.
Jeff is a great fictional example of the mind games people play with themselves to ignore or undercut serious allegations against someone they like because they want to continue liking them without feeling weird about it. Even in Dargis's review, she refers to Jeff as an alleged fiend because, him zeroing in on an underage girl and being sexually suggestive with her isn't quite damning enough. So where's the line then? What does Jeff have to do for people to believe he is a predator? Casting Patrick Wilson was an inspired choice. His attractiveness and charisma is intentional. It's meant to highlight how predators come in all shapes and sizes. They can be considered unattractive and antisocial and awkward, but they can also be gorgeous, charming, and likable, and they can use that charm to their advantage. Jeff can do all of these really damning things, but because he's likable, we can look the other way. The real problem is Haley. Is her reaction called for? Isn't it a bit much? It reminds me of the movie The Beach, which is good. Everyone made me think it was terrible before I saw it, but it's a good movie. Yes, you're all wrong. In that movie, a group of people live in bliss on a secret island away from society and all their worries. Here they get to be carefree and happy. When a shark attack kills one of its members and gravely injures another, the group turns on the injured member. His agony reminds them of a reality they don't want to think about, so they take a vote and move him to the woods where he can scream in pain all he wants, and they don't have to hear it. Life can continue being blissful. Following his death in 2012, Joe Paterno, head coach for the Penn State football team, had 111 wins vacated by the National Collegiate Athletic Association. Penn State was also banned from postseason football games for 4 years, football scholarships were revoked, and the institution was fined $60 million. Coaching from 1966 to 2011, Paterno led the team to victory countless times and was known as the winningest coach in college football history. Under his tutelage, the Lions won over 400 games, 409 to be precise. But with the 111 vacated wins, that number, of course, plummeted, and Paterno's legacy started to tarnish. What happened for all of these wins and records to be stripped away?
If I say, no, I'm not attracted to boys, that's not the truth, because I'm attracted to young people, boys, girls.
Yeah, but not sexually. You're attracted because you enjoy spending time.
Right, I enjoy, that's what I was trying to say.
In 2011, former assistant coach Jerry Sandusky, who worked as a defensive coordinator at Penn State from 1969 to 1999, was indicted on 40 counts of sex crimes against young boys. The investigation began in 2009 after the parents of a 14-year-old boy reported an incident of Sandusky having inappropriate contact with him that may have begun when the boy was only 10 years old. Within a few days of the indictment becoming public knowledge, major Penn State employees like athletic director Tim Curley and the vice president for finance and business Gary Schultz were arraigned and resigned from their positions. Graham Spanier, then president of the university, also resigned, followed by Joe Paterno's announcement that he'd be retiring after the football season, only to be fired a day later.
Paterno's announcement seen by some as a way to head off a possible move by the Board of Trustees to force him out immediately.
The Board of Trustees and Graham Spanier have decided that effective immediately, Dr. Spanier is no longer president of the university. In addition, Joe Paterno is no longer the head football coach, effective immediately.
It was impossible to look at the case of Sandusky's crimes without also looking at the culture of silence that allowed him to continue his abuse for decades on end. Like many child predators, Sandusky thrived by making himself an indispensable pillar of the community. As assistant coach, he was beloved by his team and stood alongside Joe Paterno as vital to the success of the football team. His nonprofit organization, founded in 1977, The Second Mile, began with the intent to serve at-risk youth from underserved communities, offering support to children and their families. Sandusky met most of his victims through the organization. One of the victims, referred to as John Doe 102, was kicked out of Nittany House, a nonprofit organization that housed troubled boys as an alternative to being held in juvenile detention center, after telling officials about his assault. First, project coordinator Clifford Gordon yelled at him, accused him of lying, then told him he had to apologize to Coach Sandusky. Then he was kicked out and sent to juvie. "You're gonna apologize to Coach," John Doe 102 said he was told after he brought the alleged incident to the attention of adults responsible for his safety. Sandusky and former athletic director Jim Tarman were standing 15 feet away at the time, he said. Sandusky abused his victims in numerous places: his car, his home basement, a hotel, and a significant amount took place on the Penn State campus, in the Lash football building, or the East Area locker rooms where Sandusky often took his victims on the pretense of showering together after a workout. In 1998, when an 11-year-old boy returned home with wet hair after spending time with Sandusky, his mother was naturally concerned. He told his mother that he and Sandusky showered together and that Sandusky wrestled him, kissed his head, and said he loved him. In the trial that would begin in 2012, this boy would be referred to as Victim 6. His mother quickly contacted a woman called Alicia Chambers, who was a licensed psychologist. She described what happened and asked if she was overreacting. And Chambers recommended that Victim 6's mom call the authorities and make a report because none of Sandusky's behavior sounded normal to her. The investigation then fell into many hands, and at this point it gets kinda confusing, so bear with me. Chambers, the psychologist who spoke to Victim 6, believed something was going on and filed a report with the Pennsylvania Child Abuse Line. At some point, Penn State detective Ron Schreffler was involved, and he contacted an employee from County Children and Youth Services, or CYS for short. It's unclear how, but eventually the Department of Public Welfare also gets involved, and on their end, a man called Jerry Lauro was assigned to the case. Lauro interviewed Victim 6's mother and was given an excerpt of an earlier report by Schreffler, but this report did not include the report of Alicia Chambers, who at that point was the only one outside of Victim 6 and his family who expressed concern over Sandusky's actions. So without the Chambers report, the Penn State detective Schreffler and Lauro agreed that Sandusky's behavior fell into a quote-unquote gray area, and they closed the investigation. Meanwhile, CYS was still doing their part, and they assigned social service worker John Seesock to provide counseling services to Victim 6. And Seesock evaluated the child, and he concluded that there was nothing to report, that the victim wasn't at risk of being groomed, and that Sandusky's actions fell into a quote-unquote gray area, indicating an issue with boundaries rather than sexual predation. He didn't think there was cause for concern, and went as far as to say that he'd never heard of a 52-year-old man becoming a pedophile. It was implausible. In 2002, after graduate student Mike McQuarrie reported to Paterno that he witnessed Sandusky abusing a 10-year-old boy in the showers, Paterno reported the incident to Curley and Schultz. No further action was taken, and there was no investigation. In 2011, when Curley and Schultz were charged with 1 count of felony perjury and 1 count of failing to report abuse allegations, people wondered why McQuarrie and Paterno weren't charged for not doing more. Technically, they had fulfilled their legal obligation to report to their higher-ups, but many, including State Commissioner Frank Noonan, questioned whether or not they had fulfilled their moral obligation to help a child. In an investigative report of the actions taken by Penn State regarding Sandusky's sexual abuse of children, they concluded that no one, not Paterno, not Curley, not Schwartz, not McQuarrie, had checked on the 10-year-old boy at all. Years later, when the trial took place, it was reported that nearly all of the victims who testified were abused after 1998, the year of the convoluted investigation involving CYS and public welfare. In 2011, the mother of Victim 6 stated, "If they would have done something about it in 1998, and then again in 2002, there was 2 chances. They dropped the ball, and I think they should all be held accountable. I'm infuriated that people would not report something like that. I still can't believe it. I'm appalled, I'm shocked, I'm stunned. They could have prevented this from happening." In 2016, unsealed court documents allege that Paterno may have known about Sandusky's abuse of children as early as 1976. When the statue put up in his honor was taken down, a common joke started to circulate. Instead of taking down the statue, people said, they should have just turned it around so Paterno would forever look the other way. When Slade and Nelson talk about hard candy, they make it clear they weren't really trying to be the face of morality or to, quote, protect children. To Brian and I, this film wasn't about protecting our children so much as about trying to pull together a piece of text, be it polemic or not, that addresses the fact that people don't like to take responsibility, and an increasing lack of responsibility will lead to abhorrent behavior and heinous acts. So it is kind of a litmus test to the audience. They take away what they bring in to a degree. For the entire movie, the conversations between Haley and Jeff is not taking responsibility for his actions. There's always something else to blame, and he often refers to the unofficial pedophile book of retorts to excuse his actions. He blames Haley.
You were coming on to me.
Oh, come on.
He blames his childhood.
And I cried and cried, and I could hear the tears sizzle as they hit the burner.
He attempts to convince Haley that he's actually a decent guy. Just look at all the charity work he does.
Look, go into the living room. Look in the gray cabinet. Pull out the third drawer down. You'll see prints of my work for all kinds of environmental groups. I've done shots of the Yukon Territory, Utah wilderness, Inuit villages in Alaska.
And Haley never lets him off easy. Plenty of people in the real world will do that already, so why should she join in?
She was so sexy, she was asking for it. Oh, she was only technically a girl, she acted like a woman. It's just so easy to blame a kid, isn't it? Just because a girl knows how to imitate a woman does not mean she's ready to do what a woman does. What was it supposed to be? Some kind of magic key to explain why you are the way you are? Doesn't. So what? You love nature, thus you must be a nice guy?
These are the same talking points we hear whenever a famous person, or even your next door neighbor, is revealed to be a sexual predator. The child came onto the adult. It was a different time. The adult in question didn't have a childhood of their own. There's no way this person could have done such a thing. After all, look at all the good they do for the community.
Sandusky's friends are standing behind him.
So there's nothing that I've ever seen that would lead me to believe that he would do anything of this nature.
There's a reason I couldn't really understand the audiences who hated Haley. There's a reason I felt so attached to her. Growing up during a time where R. Kelly was on trial for possessing child pornography at the same time that his album was #1 and his singles were playing constantly on the radio. I was in high school when the Sandusky case showed me that even if I did tell someone I'd been assaulted right away, there was a good chance that nothing would happen. That I would be called a liar, or that efforts would be made to protect my abuser instead of me. And I was in college when convicted sex offender Brock Turner's father begged for his son's already insultingly light sentence of 6 months to be reduced by saying, "That is a steep price to pay for 20 minutes of action." I think I must have understood even at 12 years old that Haley, despite being a fictional character, existed in the same world that I did. She knew what happened to victims of sexual abuse, both children and adults. She knew how rarely the world believed them. She knew how often and for how long abusers got away with what they did, often in plain sight. And she knew that reporting to other adults, or even to the police, didn't always lead to anything. The way some audiences responded to Jeff, so sure of his innocence even with all that he's done, is not all that different from what we see in real life. When a beloved celebrity is accused of being a predator, and because it's so much harder to accept that possibility, even if said celebrity was pretty obvious about it, they come up with excuses or resort to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. I have no one in particular in mind. Jeff gets away with so much in hard candy that to this day, people debate whether or not he really was attracted to underage girls, when one of his final moments in the movie has him outright acknowledging it, and the movie starts with him fantasizing about a 14-year-old girl showering. Come on, guys. A lot has been said about how Haley's vigilantism is problematic, how we have systems in place for convictions of sexual crimes, but if Haley came of age in the same world I did, she probably read about Roman Polanski raping a 13-year-old and the entire film industry rallying behind him. Hey, maybe she went on a deep dive and saw the probation officer's report of Polanski's crime, where he pleaded for the judge to have sympathy as Polanski had had such a tough childhood, concluding with, "Jail is not being recommended at the present time. The present offense appears to have been spontaneous and an exercise of poor judgment by the defendant." From Savile to Kelly to Sandusky and too many others to count. Seriously, this video would have been done ages ago if I didn't initially try to fit in as many examples as I could. We see how common it is for communities and professionals to look the other way. With all three of these men, allegations were brought to someone's attention quite early, but action was either not taken at all, or if it was taken, people dismissed it. There's a reason Haley doesn't show up at Jeff's house as sure as she has the right person and then calls the police on him. In the end, she gives Jeff a choice. Tell everyone you're a pedophile or kill yourself, and no one has to know. It's a trick. Obviously, she wants him to choose a second option and still reveal who he was anyway. Watching this at 12 years old, not even close to coming to terms with my own sexual abuse, I think I just admired Haley. I think that me memorizing every line, all her monologues, was a way for me to feel like I could face my abuser. And before you try to spin this into being a call for widespread vigilantism, I'll remind you that this is a fictional example, and I love this fictional example. Revenge is always an entertaining genre, but you have to admit there are some real cases where it's hard not to root for the vigilante. I'm not going to pretend I think Gary Plauché was in the wrong, and also free Luigi, you know what I'm saying? Elliot Page's performance is great here. Icy, calculated, but also really funny.
You can call the cops. I'll say I did whatever you want.
I don't think they're gonna believe a confession under these circumstances,
Then I'll
Trev.
leave.
How bad is that really?
It'll ruin my career. It'll ruin my life.
Come on, didn't Roman Polanski just win an Oscar? Don't make threats while you're still tied down. You're getting bored. Look, I'm sorry. Yeah, we gotta get the show on the road. Excuse me? Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Maybe it was the music, or I don't know, maybe it was the bullshit. Wow. You know, that is so thoughtful. You are speaking to me so selflessly. I mean, you just don't want me to castrate you for my own benefit? Wow, I'm touched. Was I born a cute, vindictive little bitch, or does society make me that way? I go back and forth on that.
And going off interviews he did at the time, he really liked playing Haley and thought she was badass.
There's still characters I think about. And she's just such an amazing one to play that I don't think I'll ever really forget about her.
As far as I know, Page's time making the film was, for the most part, good. He played this phenomenal, complex, morally gray character and collaborated with a lot of talented people. But it wasn't all good. In his memoir, Pageboy, he detailed what happened after the wrap party for Hard Candy, how a crew member he'd befriended, a crew member he thought he could trust, sexually assaulted him in his own home. He was 17 at the time. He draws a parallel between the man who assaulted him after the Hard Candy wrap party and Jeff, describing how they came across in a way that feels like they could be the same person, describing Jeff as the ever-hip professional, mini-driving, sensitive guy, the friend who could never, and describing his assailant as funny and strange and kind to me. We spoke about books, discussed films, and obscure, depressing graphic novels. A glint in his eyes made me feel seen, supported. He had a sweetness even. Too often people point to the kindness and charisma of a person like Jeff as evidence of them not being capable of doing something so reprehensible. The friend that could never. People still have a warped idea of what a sexual predator looks like. They picture a stranger in an alley or an old man in a robe. They fail to realize that it could be anyone. The person who does loads of charity work, the beloved teacher or athletic coach, the witty TV personality, the superstar, the regular Joe, the husband. The real world and the fictional world, they're both full of Jeffs and full of people who take pride in defending Jeffs. That's one of the bleak elements of Hard Candy's ending. You wonder if she's going to do this forever, and you realize that even if she did, she would continue to be outnumbered. There would still be far more Jeffs than Haley's in the world, and maybe that's why I felt like I needed her. But that's just me. Remember, everyone, if it looks like a pedophile, acts like a pedophile, talks like a pedophile, then it probably just didn't have a childhood.
That was 2 weeks short of 14. But if you have seen her, you wouldn't be particularly shocked by it. As a matter of fact, you would find it completely normal.
All right.
Wait a second.
More
When
of
you
the
have
Europe
sex
in China?
with a 13-year-old girl and you're a grown man, you know that that's wrong because
Oh, no,
she
I'm
has
giving her booze and I'm
pills.
not talking. I'm not. Look, she was down with it.
Oh, you're easy.
I don't believe these motherfuckers. I do not believe it.
So I ordered a bunch of movies, like, I don't know, Peter Pan and crap like this. And then I said, get the Olsen twins, Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen. Well, now they're like 13, and they're pieces of ass. And normally I don't look at a 13-year-old and sexualize them. I don't. But these two are pieces of ass. They're grown up perfect. Are they butting you?
Not charged. I know it wasn't rape.
Do you like teenage girls?
When you say teenage, how old are we talking? Girls who are teenagers. 19? 19 and younger. I have some 19-year-old friends, but I don't like anybody illegal if that's what we're talking about, underage. Uh-huh.